Why aren't you learning to play the drums? This question is for you who haven't signed up for drum lessons yet, but it is also for you who have already signed up for drum lessons. If you've been teaching or studying drums for a few years, there are some things you've already understood. Not worth mentioning, but I'll say it just for the record. There is no substitute for a great teacher, and quality work always pays off. The question is, what is quality work? Not worth mentioning, but I'll say it again. All the talk about groove versus technique, the no pain, no gain, or perfect practice doesn't usually help either. Music is, and should be, to a large extent, an honest expression of the person who chooses to communicate through it. Each person is one of a kind, and I've noticed through the years that one of the most appreciated characteristics in drummers is precisely that individuality, that unique voice, even though there might be common elements between musicians. A clear, decisive, and organized voice does not usually go unnoticed. The same cannot be said about the thousands of voices that swarm the internet and tell you what to do and what not to do. I don't know what to do most of the time, and it's okay. This isn't to say I applaud indecision. The truth is, life in general is complex. I don't know of any drummer who I admire who hasn't had any moments of trouble or indecision. Discovering your voice is an endless process with ups and downs, with doubts and certainties. You can aim to be a flawless performer, an out-of-the-box creative. You might just want to play around with your band and do it more consistently. It's all good. You just shouldn't be afraid to take chances, to have your voice. Okay, so let's move on to action. Or maybe later. There are so many amazing drum books out there. I confess I have many to finish. I have this dream for many years of stopping for some months and finishing the loads of books that stare at me in my study room every day. There are also workshops, tutorials, video content, websites. Anyway, over the years, I studied with private teachers, went to lots of workshops and drum camps with renowned drumming figures, and I continued to study online with various people. There are a lot of contents that I can take advantage of, and others that I can't. I'll tell you why later. What seems to me to be very obvious, and even more so as a teacher, is that there is a vast realm of intermediate drum studies that is not being broadcast. The validity of advanced studies that top drummers offer us is indisputable. An advanced drummer should already know how to choose contents to improve and should be good at organizing time to take advantage of complex contents that need time to be absorbed. But the vast community of drummers isn't just made of professional drummers. In this community of music production, educational services, creative work, and sales. Yes, sales. It is an industry also. We are all included. The beginner drummer, the part-time drummer, the drummer that goes to drum camps, and of course, the top drummer. We are all interconnected, and that seems very obvious to me. Also obvious, after more than 20 years of teaching, is the fact that any student can progress well, as long as they are available and aware. Availability includes time for class, financial availability to invest in classes and resources, and time needed for functional practice. What I call functional practice is established weekly between me and my students. It's not the 8 hours a day we dream of doing. It's not that daily hour we insist on having. It's those 20 real minutes that are available, and the practice without practicing. Listening to selected music, having drumsticks in your hands while you watch a movie, being aware of your ergonomics, etc. I told you before that sometimes I can't take advantage of some contents. And here is the reason why. Awareness is for me the most important part. Personally, I got the best results as a drummer when I became more aware. It's one of the tasks I dedicate the most time to, trying to understand why I haven't reached this or that goal, and knowing that to a large extent, I'm responsible for not finding myself in a place where I feel fulfilled musically. And it's precisely this awareness that I try to nurture as a drum teacher. More and more, I see that focusing on right or wrong is a total waste of time. So you have to start smart. In my classes, I dedicate a very special amount of time to the concept of rhythmic subdivision. It's a concept that can be developed to a very complex level, but for now, I would like to focus on the initial intermediate phase. This is particularly important for beginner drummers or drummers who don't have any type of training in the area of rhythmic knowledge. I start with eighth notes and their respective rests to train my mastery of subdivision. These were small examples in a simple and accessible way for a student at any level. Examples of eighth notes, eighth rests, doing unisons and not only unisons. For me, that's the best way to start understanding subdivision and being comfortable with doing that with hands and feet. That is the best way to progress to other kinds of rhythmic figures. If you don't master eighth notes and eighth rests with hands and feet, you will always struggle with the next figures, even more so with the formation of tuplets. Speaking about the Start Smart concept, this concept is nothing more than a form of organization for thought. I believe you should put intention into every rhythmic figure from the moment you start learning the instrument. I use it gradually, and it's virtually infinite because all the exercises are built by me and my students. For me, it works as follows. Start with the basics, try all the simple combinations, create your own variations on any exercise. Record those who seem valid to you for what you want to do musically. I say again, record those who seem valid to you for what you want to do musically. Make sure all combinations in unisons are clear to you. Try as many as you can remember. Don't forget, every exercise should sound good. Once you're confident with the basics and variations with rests, you can create something solid and interesting, even if it's only eighth notes. If you play on Chad Smith's kit, for sure you'll have a bit of the Chad sound. But what do you think would happen if Chad played your drums? I'm sure we would have a lot of the Chad Smith sound. Our choices for the tones we want to use are very important and can be very representative of our sound. But, in my opinion, the organic database that each individuality has should be the primary element in the construction of our voice. Ultimately, if we put all our resources into a drum kit to express that unique voice, anyone sitting on that kit will sound like us, and we will run the risk of not having our voice rooted in our body and in our mind. We can choose our tones through tunings, combinations of acoustic or electronic pieces, and many other options. We will certainly talk about these issues in the future. A less obvious option, it seems to me, is the study of context. This means listening to references to the genres you want to play will certainly show you many things you can try to reproduce. On the other hand, it will show you what already has been done and by whom it was done, clearly showing you what has not been done. Creativity is just another element that you can work on, just like technique or independence. Personally, I like to research old classic percussion patterns and try to play them in my own way. In this case, I took the pattern Bumba Meu Boi from Brazil and developed some ideas as an example. Try yours and submit them on my Patreon. We all have that friend who is simply the best. Sometimes we ourselves think we have that special shine. There are even those who call themselves the best in the world in certain areas. But now, here between us, it's not up to us to claim ourselves as the best, is it? And, on the other hand, the best are usually recognized among their peers, in sports and science, for example. And I've never seen a champion compete alone. But, thinking about constructive habits, there are routines who tend to bring benefits to us and those around us. We always have time to improve, and I think that this time is much more valuable than we could spend thinking about being the best. In that sense, I show you something that works very well for me. In this case, I take the key of suku rhythm and try to make it better for me, for my personal use, of course. In fact, it is an exercise of interpretation, something inherent to the history of percussion. Here are some examples of me trying to improve my experience with this rhythmic pattern. There are two ways to say it: speak or be silent. We must look in all art that is not literature for the silent sentence it contains. This expression is from one of my favorite Portuguese poets, and I often use it reflectively. Do we, as drummers, more often look for sound or silence when we want to express a musical idea? There's nothing wrong with looking for sound when it best serves an idea. But I confess that I tend to think more of sound than silence. Interestingly, in recent years, I've been paying more attention to the moments when silence best serves an idea. This example is an exercise that I like to practice with my students in the light of the concept better, not the best. We try to improve our interpretation, creativity, and execution. It's about designing a phrase and trying to remove as much as possible that sounds it contains, maintaining the groove and interest of the original phrase. These four concepts have helped me through the years, and they have helped my students. And there are many more ideas we can develop together. If you like the concepts I presented to you here, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel and Patreon. It was a pleasure to share these thoughts with you. Let's get in touch. And I wish you all pleasant and happy practice. And if you can search for your voice, I'm sure it will always pay off.